Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Line Change, the NHL betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me for this, our preview for October the 22nd, the NHL's Frozen Frenzy, meaning all 32 teams are in action, 16 games to get to, is Nick Martin. Nick, a lot to discuss. We'll go in through each game, so let's just jump right into it. We'll start this show with our two favorite underdogs, and you can go first.
Yeah, I like the Minnesota Wild. Right now they're out there at plus 131 as we're kind of in the discovery phase, but I think hopefully we'll see numbers past plus 120 and I would keep playing it at that as they take on the Florida Panthers, who should get Matt Tkachuk back here. It looks like they won't get Barkov back. And the case for the Wild right now has been really strong. They've allowed the least expected goals against the league at 5-on-5 and the least across all strengths. So they've been the defensive juggernaut that I kind of thought they had the upside to be, given how dominant their back end is compared to a lot of teams. And I've lost fading the Panthers a couple times last week, including on Saturday, took the Knights, took an overtime loss there. But I'm still seeing this kind of the same way. I think it's just going to be another coin flip type game. I really like the way the Wild are playing. I think they have the offensive punch too, that it's not like you're just backing them strictly because you're hoping that they can win this game 2-1. And I think right now the Panthers are just a little overvalued at this kind of a number. This is obviously going to be a game where you get the Wild's best performance, and I think that they've shown that right now their level's pretty high. So all in all, I think this is a good price to take on a Wild team that's been in good form so far.
Yeah, and I like a team for similar reasons. I think you can take a lot of what you just said about Minnesota, apply it to the LA Kings. They are right behind Minnesota in terms of being second in the NHL and suppressing expected goals at 5-on-5. There were some concerns that Los Angeles kind of changing its system would see them take a step back defensively, but they've been really good, and that's without Drew Doughty too. They've played really well. I think they're taking care of their own business in their own zone. Andrei Kopitar maybe is the MVP of the early part of the season. He's been awesome. They are missing Darcy Kemper, so it would be big save Dave Riddick in all likelihood in goal, which, it is what it is. Whether he'll keep his form up, who knows? They're also getting Vegas here at a good spot. Vegas just did the Florida two-step. They were in Washington, was it Jersey as well, so they're coming back across the country. Not the best travel situation for Vegas, but I like Los Angeles here. I think it's just the classic situation where the number is just a little too wide given what we've seen out of these two teams, both very good to start the season.
Yeah, I'm right with you here on the Kings. I also think they're worthy of a bet. And like you said, this is just comparable to Minnesota. They're second in terms of chances against. The Kings are. And this game reminds me a lot. This was my underdog bet when the Kings visited Vegas last November and they won 4-1. So hopefully we'll see something similar to that. And I think it's kind of interesting because for me, I think this is actually a longer number than the Kings were in that game. And I don't think that they look like they're going to fall off this season. I think that there's just as many positives to point to early on as there are negatives. And I really like Clark, as we talked about in all our season preview stuff, that he could fill in for Doughty effectively. And Jordan Spence is a guy I'm really high on. He hasn't even played every game this season, but it looks like he'll probably get to stay in based off the way that Ducks game went. So overall, I like a lot of what the Kings have going on. I think they still have a great top two units because the Kopitar, Byfield, Kempe line looks really good. Fiala's looked unreal. And playing alongside Deneau and Moore, that's a line that is really strong defensively. So I think you can put that line against Eichel's line head-to-head here and feel happy. I think the depth of these rosters right now is pretty equal. So as long as Rittich brings a respectable performance, I think this is a really good chance to take to back the Kings at this long a number.
Okay, Kings and Wild is our favorite two underdogs. Now let's get into the big board before we get into our best bets at the end of the show. We'll jump to Tampa Bay and New Jersey. The Bolts are plus 136 on the road. Devils minus 162. Total is 6.5. Tampa is one of two teams, along with the Leafs, who are playing Monday night, so they'll be on the second end of a back-to-back here in Jersey. At minus 162, I think the Devils are the right side, considering the schedule spot for Tampa and the fact that it would likely be our old friend Jonas Johansson getting the nod with Vasilevsky going on Monday against the Toronto Maple Leafs. I like a lot of what we've seen out of Tampa to start the season. Quite a bit of that has to do with just the play of Nikita Kucherov off and running once again. I think the bottom six has been pretty good as well. But the Devils, given the schedule spot, I just think have room to grow here. And I hesitate to fully endorse it just because I don't think this number is going to hang around when the confirmation comes in that it will be Jonas Johansson. So at minus 165 or better, be the Devils. But I think this thing moves towards New Jersey.
Yeah, right now I like the Devils and the over. I think as pretty clear plays. There at the time of recording, the longest number on the over was plus 104, which is pretty insane. That won't be out there, but I would actually play this over down to like minus 125. I mean, this could close at 7. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I think there's almost no world where Vasilevsky plays this game because he hasn't even. I thought before this he probably would have rested one of the games. So you'll get a back-to-back spot, and the way the Devils are competing offensively, like they're going to get their chances. I think this game has the potential to be quite high scoring. I thought at plus 185, backing the Devils to win and the game to go over 6.5 was a good bet. And then the other one that I'm going to throw out there, which was an angle I hit on Saturday with the Capitals as the highest scoring team on the slate at 60-1. I think the Devils are going to be a good pick in that market tomorrow. I'm expecting, because of all the games, that'll probably open up at longer than 20-1. Arguably, like, should be one of the league's very best offenses. They catch Tampa back-to-back here. I don't think Tampa's going to be that stingy defensively this year. I think they'll be like upper middle. So I'm not even that sold on what they've proven through 4 games on that front. And there's actually not that many teams that I like comparably in this market tomorrow. So, when you've got 32 teams in action, obviously you're going to need to fade a lot of teams that could go off. But I think that the Devils really stand out, and I'm hoping that they'll be at a good number because I think that'll be a pretty fun bet.
Okay, that brings us to a rematch of the Brett Hull controversial Stanley Cup final between the Stars and Sabres in Buffalo. Dallas minus 155, Sabres plus 130, total here 6. I don't even really know what else there's to say about Buffalo, so I'm not even going to go too into it. I do think they're a little unfortunate to have the record that they're saddled with right now, but at the same time, it's not like they've been like world-beating good and are just not catching any breaks. It's not that at all. So 2-4-1 through 7 games. I think it's, as I said, a little unfortunate, but I don't think by all that much at all. Defensively, they've been pretty good. I feel like they're just doing their part of their game is good every night, and another part is not good enough or is bad enough for them to lose. Obviously, special teams I think are still a concern for Buffalo. One angle I don't hate is Rasmus Dahlin to get on the board. Hasn't scored yet. I think at some point we're going to start seeing him trend in the right direction. He is up, getting shots, maybe not as much as you'd want, but runs a power play unit. At some point you'd expect him to click into gear. I know you were pretty high on him going into the season, and I guess it also begs the question if we're going to go back to the Dylan Cousins anytime goal scorer that still hasn't come in once this season.
Yeah, I'm going to respectively pass on those. I think my futures profile looks pretty good right now, but that Dahlin one is embarrassing. He has been dreadful. So, I don't know. On this slate, I kind of was just like, all right, I'm gonna brush right past the Sabres. I don't need to dwell on this game too much.
I do think the Rangers and Habs is interesting for quite a bit of reasons. The Habs are playing, pretty gong show type hockey, but the Islander game was, I don't know if I've ever seen a team try to lose a game in as many different ways that the Habs did, and then the Islanders just respectfully decline trying to win the game in as many ways that they did. Now they're home, and they're taking on a team that will gladly take any break that is thrown at them, so they'll have to clean it up against the Rangers. Habs plus 170 at home, Rangers minus 205, total here 6. The Rangers have not been, I understand how I'm framing this, but the numbers paint the Rangers not too dissimilarly from the Habs, and just stylistically. Like, they're giving up plenty, but the Rangers are also creating a lot. And they are the Rangers, right? They're just going to create the chances that they get. They're going to cash in on. And if you give them as many power plays as the Habs gave the Islanders, you're going to be in a world of hurt. So they're playing some pretty high event hockey. The Rangers are. I think that does give Montreal like a little bit of an avenue here, because that's not going to be that's the style that they've been playing too. But I hope that I'd catch a bigger number on Montreal than just plus 170, given the status of these two teams.
Yeah, I also kind of viewed this one as a pass. The Rangers look really good, so I don't know. Like the Habs can't defend at all. I'm starting to question more if maybe Martin St. Louis doesn't have so many answers structurally on the back end, and I'm pretty low on them. Like you look at Montreal right now, they've allowed the most expected goals against the league. I think that sounds kind of fair. If anything, I'd lean Rangers here. I think you might see a quick start too, is the other concern there. Lafreniere is also day-to-day. So Montreal's, arguably catch them in a reasonable spot, but I think the Rangers deserve a lot of credit with what they've done so far, and I probably wouldn't be talking anyone off just backing them to win this one.
The biggest favorite on the slate is the Toronto Maple Leafs. They are minus 230 on the road against Columbus. Jackets plus 190, total 6.5 here. Could be a Joseph Woll start. It could be his season debut. If it is, I would lean towards Columbus. He barely played in the preseason. He was banged up. This first start of the year for him. I'm happy to take him on if you're getting plus 190 on a team that in Columbus that we both think is pretty scrappy. They are dealing with some injuries, but at home, getting the Leafs on a back-to-back and with a goalie who hasn't played yet, I like Columbus. So I'll be looking to see what the tea leaves say about Woll. What about you here at Toronto and Columbus?
I didn't have a much here. I think I'd like to see how the Leafs look tonight. They've been pretty good at snapping losing streaks before they start. And this beat up Columbus team right now is pretty thin. So I again didn't have any bets on this one, so I'll just brush past it.
I'll be in the building for Isles and Red Wings, where right now the Islanders are minus 155, Wings plus 130, total 6. I'm expecting it to be Ilya Sorokin. He's been really good in his 2 starts. Was that on Thursday, right before we left? I was like, yeah, going to consider the Sorokin shutout, and he got us all the way through to overtime with that shutout and lost in a game in which Joel Hofer pitched a shutout. So should have just backed the 0-0 in regulation, I guess. Anthony Duclair on the shelf for a long time for the Islanders now after what I think was a groin injury against the Habs. Changes the look for the Islanders, and that's where my bet comes in. I think Simon Holmstrom, if he does draw into that first line assignment with Matt Barzal and Bo Horvat, is going to be worth a bet here as an anytime goal scorer. I also think that could lead to Holmstrom bumping up to one of the power play units. The Islanders really split it down the middle between power play 1 and 2. So I think there's enough for a play on Holmstrom to get on the board should he draw that assignment. So that's what I'll be looking at for Isles and Wings at UBS Arena.
All right. And I will be passing on this one. There's no way I'm betting your Isles at minus 152 right now.
Yeah. Look, I was sitting there thinking of anybody who was sitting out there with the Islanders at minus whatever they closed against the Habs, minus 220. They kept taking money, and I was like, I in what world were they betting that number? And I think that the Islanders the Habs played bad enough that you could argue that the number should have been even longer, but the Islanders, as I said, just kept allowing them back in. So bizarre. That was a bizarre game.
If I had to bet
stuff,
this
I saw something like
it'd be the tie if you forced me to.
They've only gone to overtime 3 times this season.
They got to do 3-point wins. Keep your Isles out of the playoffs. For all of us.
No. Jets and Blues next. Winnipeg minus 142. St. Louis is plus 120. The total here 6. Winnipeg is the only undefeated team left in the NHL after dispatching the Penguins on Sunday in Winnipeg, not travel to St. Louis. This one I actually think is a decent overtime bet too, especially if we with the goaltending matchup. Even if it is Hofer, like he was really good, and we know how Winnipeg wants to play. I don't think St. Louis will be too turned off by the idea of just playing a muck it up kind of game against an undefeated team. So I think the overtime here looks like a good bet between the Jets and Blues.
Yeah, I definitely respect that take. I'm so tempted by the Jets here, but I feel like I've already had enough of these Blues losses where I'm like, how the hell did they win that game? I get that there's obviously an argument to be made for goaltending and finishing ability, but the Blues have a 44% expected goal share. I think they've looked that bad. I lost fading them again on Saturday. That's already a couple of these ones that have been pretty frustrating. It feels like they're giving up so many quality chances, and they're so good at just they've already had 2 of these games where they just scored 2 goals in a minute and just completely turned the whole script on its head and covered up for what was a pretty ugly performance altogether. So I feel like eventually you're not going to win games like that, and they are playing a really good division team here in the Jets. So I don't mind the Jets, but on this slate, it also fell into the category of a pass.
It'll be a pass for me with Canucks traveling to Chicago. Vancouver minus 175, Blackhawks plus 145, total 6. Vancouver started to right the ship a little bit here, getting some points on the board. The Elias Pettersson situation continues to kind of dominate the storyline with Vancouver, but I think they're off to a pretty fair start, and just in terms of what their record is: 2 wins in overtime, 2 wins, a regulation loss, and a couple overtime losses. 5-on-5 numbers aren't spellbinding, but they're above average. I just don't think it's enough, considering that this Blackhawks team looks like it has some teeth to it this year and will be a scrappy underdog. So, yeah, I think this number is just a little too long on Vancouver and not long enough on Chicago, so I'll pass it.
Yeah, especially if JT Miller ends up sideline, he's huge for them, and I feel like you can't rate that quite high enough. I kind of was interested in the under here, the under 6.5 at minus 140. That would be my favorite look. I think Chicago has looked really good defensively. I think that the Canucks are still going to be a strong defensive team. A little scary with their goaltending situation, but I definitely interested in the under.
Seattle and Colorado up next. Colorado minus 120 on the road. Kraken a even money underdog at home. Total 6.5. Seattle's been kind of spunky of late. I think that they're the side I would back here at home, because I just think there's still way too many ways that the Avalanche can lose games, and there's only a few ways that they can win games, if that makes sense, right? Their 5-on-5 numbers look good. They're generating plenty of traffic towards the opposition's net, but I think the numbers are going to be a little skewed because of the schedule they played, and also it's after you get through their first 2 lines, you're not really dealing with too much, and the Kraken are their strength is its depth. So I think Seattle at plus 100 or better is fine here, and the Kraken have posted really good 5-on-5 numbers to start the season. They are overperforming in terms of just finishing their chances, but after last year, you thought that maybe they'd bounce back in that department, and they are. So I like Seattle here. I don't mind a play on the Kraken as a home dog.
Yeah, I like the Kraken at better than even money here as well. I think that they're just showing a way more well-rounded team game. I like altogether their blue line looks really good and should provide an advantage here. Hopefully they get done back, but they played really well without him versus the Flames and had some guys step in and look good. So I think you're just getting a team that's shown a way better team game, arguably has better goaltending. Who knows? I wouldn't count on that being a rule, but it has been pretty concerning, obviously, the way the Avs goaltenders are going. And the Avs' only really strong performances were over the Ducks and the Sharks. So it's not like they've proven it.
Right.
And those games were still, you could see that the bottom of this roster is not going to go out and dominate anyone. And even versus teams like that is going to be pretty average at best. So I think, if the Kraken can do a reasonably good job of shutting down the Avs' top stars, which is always a big ask, they should have a pretty good chance in this game. And I think you have to like some of the matchups some of those competent Kraken scorers are going to get down the lineup in this game. So yeah, I think it's a good shot to fade the Avalanche. I think this team's just a little overvalued based on its reputation right now.
The Ottawa Senators travel to Utah. This one's essentially a pick-em. Senators slight favorite, -105 on the road. Total 6.5. Ottawa coming off of an inspiring yet very Ottawa win against the Tampa Bay Lightning, 5-4 in that one. They are playing some pretty high event stuff themselves. A lot of it is comes down to like just weird goaltending situations and just like a ton of rubber going both ways. I feel like in Senators games. But I think that they're just a slightly better team than Utah is right now. So I would lean towards Ottawa. Not something I'm going to play right now. We'll see where it goes. But and also the goaltending situation, obviously, you have to sort out with Ottawa as well. So Sens or nothing.
Yeah, I'm expecting Ullmark. I'm on the Sens here. I'm expecting Ullmark to come back. I don't think it's a disaster if he doesn't and you lock this in early, but it sounds like he was truly very close to playing on Saturday and didn't go. And now obviously he's had a couple more days. So I'm on the Sens here. I think you look at the injuries to Utah on the back end. They did such a good job covering those losses for Boston or versus Boston. I was happy for them. But like you said, right now, I think the case that the Sens are just the better team is fairly strong. Like I really like the way Ottawa's looked this year, more or less. They've been pretty convincing. They've had a reasonably tough schedule. And I just look at the way those top three lines shake out right now and the top two defense pairings. I still feel fairly good about our thoughts heading into the year that the Sens will make the playoffs. I'm not mad that we locked that bet in. It's going to be scary if Ullmark misses much time because they showed again on Saturday how hard it is going to be to win without him. But I also think they showed a ton in those two wins versus the Kings and Lightning. And if they can get reasonable goaltending, especially if we see Ullmark, come back here, this number just looks a little off for me to have them as a slight underdog here.
Yeah, I would say both those games went off the rails, but usually when the Senators games, and that happened a lot with the Senators over the past few years, and when their games go off the rails, they just go off the rails with it, and this time they didn't. Like, they did their best to drag the game back onto the rails. So full credit to the Senators.
In both, they generated way more. Like, it was that, like, it was clear that they were the team that was receiving the bad goaltending and was suffering from it, and they just found ways to score enough to cover for it. Well, the other teams were the ones that were kind of lucking their way into like being in the game just based off those soft goals. So I think the take that like the Sens can still be a really good team if Ullmark is in goal and playing at his level is pretty reasonable.
Your neck of the woods next. Pittsburgh traveling to Calgary, take on the Flames at the Saddle Dome. Penguins +100 on the road. Flames -120. Total 6.5. Calgary finally lost over the weekend, but they still found a way to get a point. And it's not that like the numbers are like astonishingly good for Calgary, but if you look at like the expected goal percentage is hovering around like 54.7%, which is really good for this team. And even when they were at their worst, like this was a decent 5-on-5 team, and their high danger chance numbers are really good at 5-on-5 too. And this Penguins defense, man, holy moly! I get that they have the potential to outscore their problems. They're creating a lot of offense themselves. Pittsburgh is. They're getting great numbers out of Geno Malkin. I do think that I would. I like Calgary here. I think -120 on the Flames is fine. Honestly, I am okay taking on this Penguins defense, and not just the defense. It's the bad defense in front of a very suspect goaltending situation as well. So, I'll back the Flames to. I'm gonna buy high on Calgary and sell low. Do the thing you don't want to do in betting. But I like Calgary against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup because the Flames have been legitimately very good defensively. Like they were really sharp versus Chicago. With that said, that was like a pure 50-50 game, and they arguably got outplayed. And then same kind of thing in Seattle. They did a good job making it a low-event game. But I'm actually kind of closer to backing the Pens here. And the thing for me is I do think the way the Pens played when they took on some really good teams has led to them looking like a slightly worse unit than they are. They got smoked by the Rangers, lost in Toronto, and they were horrific in that game on Friday versus Carolina. I don't know if that was even close. And then you lose to an undefeated Jets team. But I do think that the records being what they are kind of has me like thinking that the Flames are getting a little too much credit here. I think if they'd played Pittsburgh's schedule, they would have looked a little worse. And I think that the Penguins have more to give offensively. So I'm kind of close on the Pens here. I kind of feel like we might see them surprise. I don't know if I fully want to do it. They have had obviously some pretty significant concerns, but I don't know. I think if it's Blomqvist, I could see myself getting there on the Pens.
It's great. Isn't it? It must make you feel good being like, I just want the number 3 goalie. If as long as it's the number 3 goalie, I'm in.
But the thing is, I'm not counting on any of their goalies stealing this game. Like,
yeah, I know.
And I feel like they do have so much more offensive punch than the Flames. They've obviously been way less sharp defensively, but I feel like at this point when you're now getting them as like a slight underdog compared to what this might have been 2 weeks ago, it's definitely tempting.
Totally understand. Sharks, Ducks, San Jose plus 154, Anaheim minus 185. Total is 6. I'm happy to pass on this one before we get to our best bets.
Yeah. Let's brush past this one.
Okay. That brings us to our best bets. Yours will come first, and it comes in the Nashville Predators 0-5, no points on the season, are minus 125 against the Boston Bruins. Bees plus 105 on the road, total 6. A lot of consternation about Jim Montgomery and Brad Marchand on the bench over the weekend. Don't think that really matters too much. What does matter is that the Bruins have been what their record says they are, which is just pretty mediocre, especially defensively. Like the Bruins are giving up a ton of shot attempts at the net, and I know that they do a decent job at like limiting the quality, and they've got a great goalie behind them. But their defensive numbers, as they were last year, just aren't what you'd expect, and they're also not creating all that much going the other way. So it's just like a recipe for mediocrity right now for Boston. You'd bank them just on their reputation to sort themselves out, but I don't know, and I think that's why you're leaning towards Nashville here.
Yeah, look, I mean, part of this is that I just want to bet the Preds getting like not going 0-5, which I know you're not supposed to go too far down that line of this team can't lose this game, but I feel like you just know you're going to get their absolute sharpest, most urgent effort here. So I'm willing to move the needle a little bit there after I watched the way that Detroit game finished. And like, I don't think the Preds have been great. They're not generating as many quality looks as they did last season. There's clearly been a bit of a, learning curve for getting those new 3 guys into the mix. None of them have played overly well, which I think was somewhat to be expected. But I'm happy that the matchup in this spot where I kind of wanted to back them snapping their losing streak is Boston, because I think Boston continues to be overvalued as well. I wasn't really high on them entering the year at all, and I haven't really been high on the way they've played so far. I think the offense looks a little flat. I'm not sold on Elias Lindholm as a number 1 center. They haven't owned much of the play anywhere on the ice. Like, I feel like you're just banking on them getting good goaltending and timely scoring, and like even more so than in years past. So yeah, they've got a good blue line and they've got some superstar talents, but I don't think that this is a team top to bottom that deserves to be viewed the way it is in the betting market. And I'm happy to fade them here versus a Preds team that I do view comparably, and obviously I'm like moving the needle a little bit in this spot. So I think we're going to see the Preds bring a really good game here and get their first win of the season.
Okay, and that brings up my best bet. It comes in on the first game of the slate. I should have noted that it starts at 6 Eastern time, and that is with the Flyers hosting your Washington Capitals. Caps are plus 100, Flyers minus 120. Washington looks really good. You should be very proud of the way that these guys are going right now. Another win the other night. I guess they're getting enough credit here as a slight dog against a team that many, I guess, viewed just slightly behind them coming into the year. But I've been pretty encouraged with what I've seen out of Washington. I think that they have a lot more there's a lot more improvement to come from them defensively. And the fact that they're generating offense after what we saw last year is encouraging. So I trust that the Caps will be able to create enough here to justify playing them as a slight underdog in Philadelphia against a Flyers team that is, I don't want to say out of sorts, but like just looks a little lost to start the season. They don't have the mojo that they started the season with last year. One win out of their first 5, and it's just not looking all that great for them in terms of like 5-on-5 play. Like last year when we saw them playing off to that surprising start, there was nothing in the numbers that suggested it was a fluke. This time they are getting outplayed at 5-on-5, and they did start the season on a pretty tough schedule, going out west right away. But I just think Washington is a couple steps ahead of them right now, so I like them as a dog here.
Yeah, the spot scares me a little bit in terms of like this just feels like one of those ones where Tortorella is going to have the group ready to go. But with that said, that was kind of, I bet on the Canucks on Saturday. I was a little afraid of the spot because it felt like one of those ones you knew Philly was going to make the game as tough as possible, but the number just looked way too short. And they were largely disappointing that game. So I obviously feel like they do have room to grow. I'm closer to betting the Caps here. I'm with you on that. And I think there's a lot of positives to point to, like among the Caps roster that you could, go in depth on for a while. The third line, both Mangiapane and Brana weren't there last year. So that's just a whole new look on the third line that has been productive. And Dubois has been really good. Like he has been excellent. He's provided them a legitimate star forward. So hopefully he can keep that up over a larger sample. And I think if he can, this Caps team should prove to be a fair bit better than the Flyers. So I'm not in disagreement with this one at all.
All right, that does it. 16 games done and dusted in just around 32 minutes. That's how it's done, folks. Just to recap, underdogs came in on the Minnesota Wild for you. I like the Los Angeles Kings in the nightcap, the last game on the slate against the Vegas Golden Knights. And our best bets, I liked Washington, and you liked Nashville against the Bruins. That'll do it for this episode of Line Change. Thank you for listening, rating, reviewing, subscribing. Thank you to our producer, Noah. We will see you again on Wednesday.